Hello, welcome to another episode of Despolariza. This is the second episode in English, and you'll understand why in a few moments. Before I get started, I want to thank the new supporters of the project: Camila Fonseca, Teresa Abreu, Frederico Teotónio Pereira, Liliana Pereira, Maria Almeida, Diana Ramos, Vanessa Grilo, Júlio Sá, Eduardo Borges Santos, and João Martins. A big thank you to these people who are now part of the Despolariza community. If you're interested in becoming part of this, there will be a link around me and in the description below. Otherwise, think about leaving a like, a comment, or a subscription, which also helps the project. And enough of that, let me introduce you to our wonderful guest this beautiful June morning. Seyran Ateş is a German lawyer and a Muslim feminist, and a lot of people consider her a female imam. She founded a mosque in Germany in 2017 as Germany's first liberal place of worship for Muslims. Ateş is best known for challenging conventional ideas in Islam by opening her mosque, which breaks with traditional precepts of what being a Muslim means. She won Woman of the Year in Germany in 2005, was one of the 1,000 women nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2005 through a collective called 1,000 Peace Women. And unfortunately, she has received a fatwa from the Turkish Religious Authority as well as the Egyptian Fatwa Council. Welcome, Seyran.
Thank you for inviting me.
Hoş geldiniz.
Merhaba.
We were just talking a bit about my ex-girlfriend from Turkey and sharing a bit about that, but we'll get to that later. How are you enjoying Portugal?
I really enjoy because I love really this part of Earth. It's a nice place to be. And this is now the second time this year to be here. It feels like homecoming.
And you have you're specially attracted to Viana do Castelo, I hear.
Yeah. I found a nice place. A friend of mine, he told me about Rami and this hostage and his story. So there were some so-called coincidences, but I don't believe in coincidences. Something happened that we ended up in Vienna, and this is really a kind of paradise.
Nice. You don't hear a lot of Portuguese people speaking about Vienna as a paradise, you know? It's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's many times I made this experience that I go somewhere in another country and I found out that there's some energy, whatever, and I'm happy to be there, and people around me are looking surprised. What's going on with this crazy old lady? But then after a while, they understand the energy.
So Despolariza normally starts, as I told you, with a question, which is, what was your genetic lottery and your social lottery? And I ask this question because it helps us gain empathy for people. Nobody chose their DNA, nobody chose the type of family they were in or the country. And so what was your life lottery, and how do you think that affected the person you are today?
Yeah, first of all, thank you again for this opportunity here and this question. I really love it because many times I think many people think about it, why I was born in this family, especially in this family. So I'm one of those human beings who never understood why my mom is my mom, my father is my father, because I was so different. I love my family. I love my brothers and my sister especially very well. But sometimes I felt like coming from the Mars, from another planet. But then I found out there's no coincidence. There are so many reasons why we were born in this special surrounding and this family. And yeah, what is my DNA? What is my lottery is that my father was a Kurdish man, very special, and my mom a Turkish lady, still living. My father died in 2014. And so you can imagine, coming from Turkey, I had a lot of questions because of my lottery. Why? Again, also this question, why coming from these parents?
Especially because Kurdish people are a bit frowned upon in a lot of regions of Turkey.
Kurdish people are victims of racism from the first day when they are on the earth, in Turkey and also in the other countries close to Turkey, because Kurdish people never ever had their own nation, never ever had a place of in close to Turkey or wherever, where they could say this is our country. So they never had their own country and nation, even when we have now in Syria parts of, or in Iraq, especially in Iraq, parts of Kurdistan. But so what does it mean? That means that my father, as a minority in Turkey, he was not allowed to speak Kurdish. So he gave me my name, Seyran, is a Kurdish name, but I never learned Kurdish. And this is really something in my heart. It breaks my heart. It's really it's pain. It's really pain. It's a genetic pain. So I feel this. It's a part of my lottery that I have still this pain that I cannot speak Kurdish. I can speak very well Turkish, and this is my mom. And I never want to miss her and this part of my DNA. But why people do so much bad things to Kurdish people, and all the discrimination and all the treatments against the Kurdish people are somehow part of my character. So feeling be discriminated, being a minority is something that I drink with the milk of my mom. So how you say it in Portuguese, I don't know the point.
Makes sense, though. Yeah, so it's interesting. You had a majority mother and a minority father, and that
Yeah.
maybe made you think about things early. Let's look at this picture of you. How old were
Yeah.
you here? Were you still in Istanbul or in Germany?
I was still in Istanbul and I was 5 years old, and I really loved this period in my life. The first 5 years were like paradise. We were a very poor family in Istanbul, but we as children, we were absolutely free. Boys and girls played together. We had a huge playground around our houses. All our relatives, many of them lived very close to us, so we could run from one house to the other house, and we had just little small houses, but very, very huge, big hearts of the adults. They were always taking care about us, and it was freedom, absolutely freedom, and a very nice childhood.
And what area of Istanbul was this?
Mecidiyeköy. And
Okay.
nowadays it's a very expensive area. Nowadays it's very modern. It's not like in the 50s and 60s. I was born in 63 and I left this place in 1969. So this period was one of the best periods in my life.
And so why did your parents decide to move to Berlin?
They decided to move to Berlin because we were a very poor family and having 5 children, and just my father was working and was not enough money to feed all the kids and the family. So it was a chance for my family that Germany asked for guest workers.
And I saw your documentary. What's it called again? Sorry, I can't remember the
Seyran
documentary.
Ateş, Sex, Islam and Revolution.
Sex, Islam, and Revolution. It's a good documentary. I don't know if it's available, if it's public or not. But
It's available through Vimeo, so they have to ask the author, the director for the link, and they can see it.
And I really enjoyed listening to you talking about something which I found interesting, was that somehow the community of Turkish people you arrived in Berlin was more conservative than back home. In what things did you feel this in your day-to-day life, and how did you feel?
It was really hard as a girl, especially. So I never had this experience in my first period in Turkey, as I mentioned. In Istanbul, so boys and girls were playing together and playing around, even when patriarchy was also existing there. But I was in an age that it doesn't matter if I'm a girl or a boy. When we arrived in Berlin, it was like that my brothers were allowed to go around, they had friends. But for me as a girl, it was forbidden, and they always mentioned my gender when they said, no, it's not allowed for girls and we have to take care more about you. I never understood as a child why they have to take more care about me than about my brothers. But then the gender apartheid was my reality in my childhood and when I was a teenager. And this is what changed when we arrived in Germany. And then the community was very close. The Turkish community was, and my family, the friends of my parents, they were really close because they couldn't speak German. They were just guest workers, and They had no time for socialization, for have friends or make friends. And it was not easy to get in touch and contact with Germans the first years. So they built like a little parallel society. Now we have much bigger parallel societies. It was like a little small society, what was very normal. And I don't, I mean, I don't criticize this because all over the world, if people move somewhere, that you are looking for somebody who can understand you, your language, your culture. And this is what they did. And and then but at the end, it was like a closed club. And me as a girl, I was not allowed to have too much contact with the outside, the Germans. And then, yeah, after a while, I decided to leave this little village of parallel society of Turkish community and my family because it was so conservative, more conservative, as I mentioned, than my family in Turkey. My cousins, they had much more freedom than I had in Germany, in Berlin. Even when it was called a democracy, it was called an open society and modern Western country. For me, it was like living in somewhere in the mountains in a little village.
Yeah. And so you ran away at what age?
17.
But did you literally run away, or did you tell your parents, "I'm leaving. I
I
can't take
literally
this"?
ran away. It was really, I prepared this many weeks with some friends and other people who could help me. I just packed a little case and just take it and go. And my parents didn't know where I've been. And because I was not an adult, I was not 18, the official institutions where I go to, they had to inform my parents. That's how it happened. But then I decided to stay another place, and the state was taking care about me for a while. They had all the rights about me and where I would, and I could stay because I asked the court to take away all the rights from my parents.
Okay, so you tried to emancipate yourself at 16,
Yes.
and you were living in government housing.
First, I lived in a government house for a while, and then I lived with some adults or older women in a kind of roommates.
Okay, and were they Muslim?
They were not Muslim, they were Turkish, but interesting, they were Germans, but one of them was a Turkish-German mixture by coincidence.
And so let's look at another photo. This is you many years later.
Yeah.
These are your brothers and your sister, correct?
Yes.
Your sister who's here in the studio with us.
Yes, I love her very much.
And this was, so before we get to this picture, you became a human rights lawyer, or am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. I'm a lawyer, and this picture was after the attack when I was shot. I was studying law, and then I just started studying law to be a women rights fighter and do family law and all those things what women need to start a new self-determined life.
And so, can you tell the story of the September 25th, 1984? Like, how did it come to be that you were shot?
Yeah, this is a really hard story.
If you're comfortable with that.
I'm a little bit tired about telling the story, but on the other side, this is still one line in my life, which is still my reality because of my work for women's rights, and this was what I did in 1984 already. So I will start from the beginning. When I finished the school, I decided. I've decided to study law when I was 15. And then when I finished school, I started studying law. And in the third semester, I was working already for 1.5 years in a women's shelter. It was like a women's center where we helped women from Turkey, what means Turkish and Kurdish women. We helped them to come out of domestic violence houses. So we found ways for them to start a new life, own life, be self-determined, and fought against violence. And so what happened is that we just helped them to learn reading and writing and being together, talk about their problems with other women and share their problems and solve them together. For example, especially this day when it happened, for example, Fatma came to this place, and she was one of the women who was coming regularly because she couldn't speak German and read German, and asked me to translate a letter from job center. So it was really just a little easy job, and it was not about violence, not about divorce, not about whatever, all the hard stuff. And when I was sitting there with her on the table and start translating, I heard a man's voice that he wants to come in, and I heard in my back my colleagues try to ask him very, very polite to go out and try to explain that this is a place for women and he should please stay outside, and we will give answers to him if he can, but outside, because this place is just for women. And this is what I have to explain. We opened this place just for women because those women were not comfortable to be in a place where also men are being there, and to talk about their problems was impossible for some women. So I was working there as a student, and then but this man said that was what I want is will not take long time. It was just a very short sentence, and then he came in, put his hand in his trench coat and take off a gun and shot to us. And Fatma died. I survived very hard because he shot me in my neck, and one of my artery was destroyed totally. So I lost a lot of blood, and it's really a wonder that I'm still alive. So I survived. It was medical speaking not possible that I would survive this attack. And now the reason why this man did that, nobody found him later. I mean, this is a very complicated story, but the man who did this, he ran away and nobody could catch him. But later on, because of pictures, what we could draw and what we could explain how he looked like, the police could catch somebody and put him in jail. But after 6 weeks, after the court, they have to take him out because and the decision was for him because the court couldn't 100% prove that he was the person who was shooting this day. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. So he was Fatima's husband, I assume?
No.
No? Oh, wow.
Wow. Now I'm sitting here in Portugal, and this is the very sad side of this story. This happened in 1984. And especially the left wing, especially media, were telling this wrong story. And even here in Portugal, I hear this story. It was not the husband. If it would be the husband, somebody would be in jail. And we didn't have to find somebody. The man was running away and he's free. So this is the other story. How can the perpetrator be free if we would know that it was the husband of Fatma? So it was really a strange story what we could read in media. And I try to tell the real story so many times and change Wikipedia and everything, but it's unbelievable. But still, this story kept growing.
Okay.
Like this. It was not her husband. It was a political attack. It was an attack from very orthodox people, very radical Muslims, from fascists and nationalists. And for us, who was into this issue and topics, We believe that it was an attack from the Grey Wolves. It's a kind of nationalist and religious movement coming from Turkey.
Grey wolves.
Grey Wolves, they call themselves Grey Wolves, yes. And this is what we believe, that they were the ones who ordered this killer.
So instead of
Hired this killer. It was a hired killer.
Instead of Seyran and Fatima, it could have been two other people. It was just you were there on that day.
It was really by accident that I was there on this day, because it was Tuesday morning. Normally I was in the university for this, always on Tuesdays, always on this day. Normally, because I was studying, I was normally working just in the afternoon. So in daytime, I was so seldom there. And especially this day, a colleague changed with me the place to work there. So it was not against me or against Fatma, it was against the institution.
And how did you feel? Do you remember thinking, this is it, goodbye? Or did you think you were going to die? What memories and emotional memories do you have?
I had a close death experience this day, and I thought I will die, and then I said, no, I'm too young to die. And I had a kind of talk to God. I was a believer all my life before, and this day I was 21. I was a modern woman. I was a student. I was studying law. So you can imagine I was a left-wing feminist. So in my life, religion didn't take that much part. And especially coming from Turkey, as you know, Turkish people growing up in a very system, secular system. So religion was not the main point in my life, but this day it was another proof for me that my spirituality is in me, and my spirituality and my relationship to God is a kind of very private and very, very special. And this day I had a kind of talk to God. When he shot me, I was falling down physically, but psychological and my feelings, I jumped up, not jumped up. I was, how you say it, very slowly rising up. Yes, I was rising up very slowly, and I could see myself lying down in the blood, and I was seeing what happened around me, and out of my body, I had all this happiness what a human being could have. It was a feeling of emotion of absolutely happiness.
Wow.
And absolutely clear and very much close to myself. So I was more than, it's impossible to be more yourself. So, and feeling all myself. So my thoughts going to my cat. He was running away. I didn't find him. I said, I cannot die. I didn't find my cat, Carlos. I have to find Carlos.
It was a childhood
week ago, he ran away from home. So I was coming from a road trip. Oh, from Portuguese. Yes, we were in Portugal this year. Yes, okay. 6 weeks. This was the trip, the last summer trip. We made all the way from Germany to Sagres. Okay. And we had a very nice time in Portugal. And so coming back, my cat was run away. Was not there, Carlos, my lovely Carlos. And for a week, I was really depressive because I couldn't find him. And in this situation, I said, I cannot die. I have to find Carlos. It was my first point. And then my parents will be very sad. And my boyfriend also. So that were my thoughts somehow and my feelings. And then I said, oh, I'm too young. I don't want to die. And then in this moment, it was raising lighter and lighter. So this very, very light situation, what other people also describe like this, I was just in the light, white light, and feeling myself very well, and had a kind of dialogue, not like we are talking to each other.
Worse
than very, very different. And then, and this dialogue was like, what I heard was a question. If I want to go and come with this light, or if I want to go back in this life, And I said, please, I want to go back in this life because I'm too young and I want still do. I have visions and I have missions to do, especially this word mission was what I said. And I want to finish my missions.
Wow. So how long did all this take? How long did it feel it took? Maybe it was a few seconds, but
Yeah, it was a few seconds, but at the end it was around between 10:20 and 10:30 when it happened. And it took 5 hours surgery to get the bullet, find the bullet in my neck and fixed everything so I could survive. So all the time I was coming and going, my soul. So there were some hours, but this dialogue was maybe just 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But the feeling of,
so you believe you talked to God?
I believe that I talked to God. And so now the next question is, what is God and who's God? So my view on this issue is very different than what other people have, and they are strict religious in a way that they separate in different religions. So my point of view and here, or my emotions are, God is much bigger than this word God. So I'm not comfortable with naming God.
Yeah, that's a very
This
common
is-
position.
Yeah, and this is a very common position, and this is what I felt in this situation. It's not so simple.
It's unspeakable,
It's unspeakable
ineffable.
what I felt in this moment.
Wow. So you had the out of body experience
Yeah.
and the question, like, do you want to stay
Yeah.
or not?
Yeah.
That's you've probably read more about this than me, but it's quite common, right? A lot of people report
Yes.
similar things in near-death experiences.
I talked to other people, and I joined to some conferences about it, and seminars. People ask me about it. So yeah, it's quite common. But when I listened to Salman Rushdie 3 weeks ago when he was in Berlin, I read his book. He said, "Oh, I don't have, I didn't have such experience. It was very different. That he's still not believing in God. So his story is different. So many other people have the same story, common story.
And so how do you let's look at this picture again. So this was
Yeah.
after you were shot,
Yes.
but you had you reconciled with your father and your mother? Like, was there ever a period of your life where your father wouldn't talk to you, or and your mother?
Yeah, I mean, the first 3 months were not really comfortable. So my father tried to find me, bring me back home, and it was really dangerous for me. So my teacher hid me in her house. So I didn't go out of the house. So what means that I was kind of in protection, and like in Corona, just stay home. And like since 18 years after under police protection, being very much in close places. So I lived for 3 months, without going to school, and lived, less moving out of the house. It was not nice. After a while, I told my father, if he will still trying to find me and bring me back home, I will leave the city and I will maybe go to another country, and he will never see me again.
Okay.
And then he's accepted and stopped searching. But for 5 years, so he didn't know where I lived. Just after I got shot, we start talking more openly about my living situation, and he accepted. He has to accept that I have a German boyfriend, and then we literally come together.
And so here, this is your little sister's 18th birthday, right?
Yes, yeah.
And
She's 5 years younger than me.
And you talked to your father on this day and your mother. Everything was peaceful.
Yes, in these days it was then finally peaceful day.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how do we go from here to the year where you opened a mosque in Berlin?
That was a long term and long trip, but on the other side, it was very consequent. So there's a red line in my life from the point when I run away from home. It was very clear for me that I wish I could have a free, self-determined life, and I will stand up for freedom and also help other people. So that was finally everything very consequent in my life. So studying law, opening an office, and even when I got shot, going further with the energy. And then after many years working as a lawyer, and especially for women women coming from the Muslim context, I realized that those women and men need also religious help. And being one of the members of the German Islam Conference, I realized that men take the right to talk about Islam in their hand, and they take the right to know the truth about Islam and everything. So I found out again there's a situation, especially a very archaic patriarchal situation in my religion. And after 9/11, we all are also responsible. All people, all Muslims are responsible to do what they can do to change the picture and the view on Islam, and to do something against the violence, to do something against the terrorists and against the people who are misusing the religion, and also do something for the ones who needs help. And as a lawyer, I realized that the woman needs help when it comes to divorce, when it comes to marriage, interfaith marriage, for example.
So spiritual help apart from legal help.
Spiritual help. So many points why they need help. So I said, we need more fight for gender equality in Islam. And then that was one of the points. And then I just realized that the LGBT community in Muslim communities are extremely discriminated and living in danger, suicide somehow, so very close to suicide. Many of them, and many really suicided because of not bringing together to being more Muslim and LGBT.
Like Tugay.
Like my nephew Tugay, yes.
Like Tugay, yeah.
Yeah, and then I decided, okay, my nephew, all the children around me, and all the women I work for, they need a own place. A own place, a mosque, where they can be themselves, like I felt when I got shot. So I, myself, feel themselves and be comfortable with the reality that they are Muslims and at the same time feminists and gay and lesbian and trans, whatever.
Yeah, and super interesting. Tugay or Tugay? Tugay would be a bit funny because he's gay.
But this is funny.
Yeah.
This is what I many times say to him. Tugay.
He's a bit too guy.
Yes.
But his story is very interesting. It was one of my favorite parts of the documentary about you.
Mine's too.
Yeah,
Mine's too, yes.
Because he was homosexual.
He is the son of my sister. Yes, okay. As you know, I was there when he was born.
Yeah, and it's super interesting because he says that he felt homosexual since a young age. He knew, and he felt so guilty about that. Yeah. That he thought my only chance at salvation is to become basically a radical, an extremist, is to die for Islam because I'm gay.
Yeah.
And that was like super mind-blowing for me because I always associated the radical types with the ones which had been okay, it doesn't make a bit sense, but I had always associated them with the ones who wanted to perpetuate the patriarchal tradition exactly as it was. And that it came only from obedience. But apparently there are cases like Tugay where it comes from a feeling of guilt, you know, a feeling of guilt so big that you're contemplating killing yourself for salvation.
Yeah, guiltiness. Yeah, absolutely. And I was so sad. I was there when he was born. I was the person who I had the privilege. This is what I used to say: the privilege to be the person who see him first. So
Okay.
I love my nephews and my nieces, and I realized that even my nephew and my nieces, they start being more and more traditional Muslims. Even when we become a very modern family, we were a modern and liberal family, but somehow our kids become more conservative. And now even more conservative than the conservatives in Germany anyway, were like, as I mentioned, in Turkey, they were more modern. So it was really it is still a hard situation in Germany in these parallel societies. And watching this situation and having the feeling we are losing our kids to Islamists made me really, really sad and
What do you
crazy.
mean by Islamists?
Political Islam, who were giving my nephew this feeling that he felt guilty. Who gives him this feeling? It was not coming from himself. It was coming from abroad. It was coming from other people telling him a good Muslim cannot be a gay Muslim. To be gay and Muslim is not acceptable. It's not possible to be both. So, I mean, he never ever heard that from his mom, and never ever heard that from me, but from his father somehow, and from very traditional patriarchal thinking people. So that's what I couldn't accept. And one of the reasons why I then start thinking about the liberal mosque was watching all these stories about the youth. And I'm so happy that we could help Tugay to accept his own, to accept Tugay, who is Tugay, and find out who is he and how he wants to live himself, and not what other people want from him.
And there, he said a very powerful sentence, which I even wrote down, which was, I was praying 5 times a day, fasting. And then at one point I realized I've prayed to God for years. So trying not to be gay. So either God doesn't exist or being gay is fine.
I got goosebumps. Still, all the time when I listen to him and hear this. Yeah. And so listen to this young man, I mean, suffering that much for things, for nothing, in my opinion. So suffering for being just a lovely person. So how can it be? And this is worse enough to fight against political Islam, against Islamists, against people who try to use our religion, or in general religions, to do pressure on people not to be gay. It's not acceptable, or not to be a feminist, not to be free.
Okay, so let's make this a little bit harder, because I completely empathize with what you're doing, and I think you're going the bravest way possible, which is opening a mosque and having a lot of people in Islam hate you for that, and becoming a sort of female imam. But the fact is that the Quran itself has instructions on about how to keep your woman obedient and what to do with her. I just want to read one, which is chapter 4, verse 34, which says, men are in charge of women by right of what Allah has given one over the other and what they spend for maintenance from their wealth. So righteous women are devoutly obedient, guarding in the husband's absence what Allah would have them guard. But those wives from whom you fear arrogance, first advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally strike them. But if they obey you once more, seek no means against them. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted and grand. So it literally says if she disobeys twice, you can hit her. So how do you reconcile this, being a feminist and being a Muslim? How does this work?
and this is not the only part in Quran where you can find misogynist sentence.
Yeah, I have about 10.
There are many. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are much more. There are much more than 10, but this especially is 335. And then being an eyewitness, for example, a woman is half price at court.
You
this
need
is also,
one man or two women.
Yes, this is also very special. Especially this one is, you have to read the Quran in this time. This is the reason why liberal Muslims used to say, or also our mosque is opened, because we are debating and discussing the holy book, historical, critical. So I try to understand what happened in this time, 7th century, that the prophet got this surah and message from God. So what was the reason? And as it is in Christianity and Judaism is the first Abrahamic monotheistic religion. So you have to read all the holy books, which are all of them very patriarchal, very misogynist. So we have to ask ourselves if we as believers could believe just in this sentence, reading exactly word for word. What does it mean to beat a woman? Is it allowed nowadays, or was that what it means or meant? And at the end, we have to accept that in the 7th century, men beat women, all of them, not only the Muslims. The Christians did.
I agree.
Totally. Everybody.
There maybe 100 years ago.
100 years
also,
ago.
Everyone
just
hit
100,
the women.
just 100 years ago. So what was the solution for the prophet? So it's an interpretation what I'm now telling you. And I don't know if this is the truth, but we try to read historical, critical, the story behind the story. So what happened is there's a story telling that the prophet realized he never beat his own wives. He never treated wives bad himself.
How do you know?
This is what is written. I don't know that. This is what I want. This is what I mean when I say, I don't know if that's right, because I just can tell you what I found, what I could read. But I'm a very critical reader. That's the point. I don't believe everything what I read. And that's why I read more and more and more and try. And at the end, for myself, I decided this book is a book. And I don't know, nobody can know what really happened in the 7th century. And if the traditional ones, the Orthodox ones, tell me the story that the prophet never ever beat his own wives, why he could accept, why he could say that God told him this surah. So how could it be? Maybe this is just written by man, the patriarchal man, after the prophet died. As you know, the holy book of the Muslims, the Quran, was written down 200 years in total, how we have it now, 200 years after the death of the prophet. So, and as a critical thinker and believer, I ask back, who knows that these words are the real words from God? We should have the same debate like the Jewish people have. I love the Jewish for that. They always argue about each sentence in the Torah. So this is what we should do, and this is what I'm doing. I say, I'm somehow a believer. What means somehow? I'm a believer. I had my close death experience. I was born and growing up in a Muslim family. So there must be a reason. This is my DNA, my lottery, my genetic lottery. So there must be a reason why I was born in this family. And I should fight for emancipation, for gender equality, LGBT rights in this family. So for me, my mission is to discuss and debate inside Islam all the topics, all the things what you now also pointed out.
Okay, so you ended up answering one of my next questions, which was, since you're a woman of the world and you've traveled so much and you know so much about so many religions, I was going to ask you, why not change to a religion which doesn't say these violent things.
Makes no sense, because especially the Abrahamic religions. So it makes no difference make no difference for me being a Jew or Christian or Muslim. So the three Abrahamic religions, we have the same stories. In our holy books, we are reading about Moses, we are reading about Jesus, we are reading about Noah, we are reading about Lot, we are reading about David and Adam and Eva. So we have the same stories. It makes no sense.
But
So
you have some of the same stories, but let me just give you some background first.
Yeah.
So my personal story with Islam. So as a traveler, I've been to many Islamic countries: Morocco, Egypt, Iran, Indonesia, like a lot. But then the closest I got was when I had a Turkish girlfriend, and at that time I started reading a lot about Islam. I read a specific book called No God But God by Reza Aslan.
I know.
Then I came to discover that that book wasn't 100% honest, because it's Christians do the same and Jews do the same. They kind of cherry pick, the parts more about peace, and they leave out the parts more about war. And so at one point in my life, I was almost telling people in the street, listen, Islam is not violent. Islam is a religion of peace, so on, so on, so on.
No.
But then I kept growing and I kept learning. And I think now I can objectively say, I'm not a specialist in all the holy books, but I can objectively say that Islam has more direct appeals to violence, and has more direct appeals to killing the infidel and to beating the woman, So it's I think you can't say they're the same in that.
Yeah. Especially beating the woman is not right. So in the Bible, because as a feminist, I know from my feminist friends very much phrases from the Bible that beating the woman or violence against the woman, it's really in the Bible the same level. This is not true, but
beating the woman, are you sure?
Yeah, violence against the woman
in the New Testament.
Yes, in the Old Testament especially. The Old Testament especially. Very, very many.
No, yeah, phrases. Old Testament, I believe you.
Old Testament, yes. Yeah. And in the New Testament, you are right. There are less, but at the end, it's patriarchy. So we are talking about not only violence is not just beating women. So violence is also discriminating. So the question is, what kind of rights belongs to women? What kind of rights belongs to men? This is where I start always. When I talk about different countries, when I talk about religions, in every topics, I start from the point, how is the situation of the right of the woman? And this is the point where I say there's no difference between the Orthodox and the traditional ones. Nowadays you can say that the Jewish people and the Christians made very good work on emancipation and transformation. Especially the Christians, they have had the Reformation, and with the Reformation, women got much more rights, especially with Martin Luther and his wife. So
before that, were women and men separated in churches?
Absolutely, they were not allowed to sit together
in the Catholic Church.
In Catholic Church and in Orthodox Jewish synagogues, that it's impossible that men and women are sitting together. So this is the point where I start from. This is what I mean. What at the end, what I could say is that these days, there are enough proofs to say that from the Muslims, or how Muslims interpret and read and write about Islam. So on this point, you are right, and I agree with you. There's much more violence, or much more call for violence inside the Muslim community. And that's the point why I try to say, please be honest. I agree with you totally. So when we talk about Judaism and about Christianity, we can see much more development in Europe, especially, that the church is now working much more together with democracy, or is part of democracy. in the beginning, the churches also fight against liberalization, against modernism, against democracy and secularism especially. In Germany, for example, nowadays you can find the churches inside the club of the Democrats. But on the other side, they try doing their best to stop modernism. In another way, it's much more in subtitle. Yeah, it's much more behind the doors.
Yeah, I get it.
And it's not so on the
Not so
surface.
obvious.
Yeah, this is what's very clear. But again, I agree with you totally. When it comes to violence, we have a big problem with the Muslim community and Islamic countries. That's the truth. And all of them explain their what they are doing with the Holy Book, with the Quran. That's true. And what we as liberal Muslim can do is just telling the other stories, trying to work for reformation, for transformation and emancipation. This is what we are doing.
Because if you say, no, that verse is not really what God said, then
Yeah.
that's a blasphemy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But we are
But
still,
you've
we
already
are still
committed
doing
so
it.
many
I'm
blasphemies.
sorry, I had so many death threats, so it makes no sense. One more or less. So what I could say to everybody is use your own brain. God gives us brain to use it and logical thinking. So this is what we should do. And at the end, what also our brothers and sisters in the other Abrahamic religions did, we have to do the same. To ask ourselves if all the regulations in our holy books are still working these days. So, or if we have the mission given by God to implement the idea of the phrases, the idea of the surahs in the 1st century, and how we can do that. So morality is important.
So what to you is so we've talked about the bad verses.
Yeah.
What to you is the essence of Islam? What to you is the verses you look at or the attitude you look at and think like, this is what I'm getting from this. This is why I chose this religion. Even though you very explained you didn't choose it. It was life.
I didn't choose it. I was born in this family. But I have the decision to go out. And so I feel free to have this decision. Even when people would kill me for also this, what I would do if you say I'm not a Muslim anymore, it's apostasy, and some people believe that for that reason you could be killed for it. It's not allowed to go out of the community, of the congregation. But I feel myself free to decide that. And now my age, it's my free choice to stay in this religion. Why I stay still in Islam is that I'm a believer. And when I was born in this religion, there must be a reason on one side. And on the other side, what I really like in Islam is that it's such a basic, how you say, a basis democratic religion. We don't have a kind of ordination, as I mentioned with the imam. What is an imam?
Oh yeah, what is an imam?
What is an imam? We don't have religious institutions between the one and God.
There's no Vatican.
There's no Vatican. There's no Vatican. There's not any kind of institution. And nobody has the right to stay in between you and God. Nobody has the right to interpret it for you, the Holy Book, on everything. So you are asked to read yourself and understand yourself. And this is really the individual, how you say it in German, individualistic side of Islam is what I really like, because it's really a relationship between yourself and God directly. And all the other spiritual sides, spiritual things with playing with the mystic and the Sufi side of Islam, as you know, maybe is more sophisticated and more mystic And if it comes to metaphorics and mystics, it's a nice religion. If you
I love
concentrate,
Sufis. Are you a
yes,
Sufi?
I'm Sufi. Yes, much
Yeah.
more Sufi than Sunni. Yes,
I'm asking also
is what-
because I saw the whirling dervishes dancing in your mosque,
Yes.
and I know that's
That's
a
the
form
reason-
of prayer.
yeah, that's the reason why I feel much more belonging to the dervishes and the Sufis. And Rumi is one of my idols in Islam. So this is how I look to Islam. And Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi is Mevlana is part of Islam. So, and he's a universal believer. And as a universal believer, he's not belonging to a religion, but he's part of Islam. So I, for myself, find out. So if we have such a big, great, mystic poet in our religion, so I'm following his ideas. I'm following his poets. I'm following his writings and his texts, and that makes me really happy.
Rumi is one of my favorite religious thinkers in
Yeah.
the history of mankind. It's really,
Yeah,
if you
and-
don't know it, look it up or buy a few books.
yeah.
It's like
You can also-
everything he writes has
Yeah.
something golden in the middle.
Hundreds and thousands of poets what he wrote. You just can Google, and you will find sentence and sentence more. Just in one sentence, he can put a huge story, and this is what I really love.
I'm not sure. I think this sentence is his
Yes.
that I shared on the
Yeah.
Spulariza's page,
Yeah,
but I'm not sure. But I'm gonna risk it. It's when I was young, I really wanted to change the world, but as I grew wise, now I want to change myself.
this is really
Rumi?
It's Rumi. It's
Okay.
definitely Rumi.
Yeah.
And one of my favorites is that between you and me, there is between you and me, you can say it also so, between the right and the wrong, there is a place where I want to meet you.
Oh yeah, I know that one. Like
Yeah.
meet me in a field
in a
between
field,
right and wrong,
yeah.
between right and wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love really that. And also as a pilgrimage, when I walk on Camino, this is one of his poets quotes as well, is to say, if you go your way, other people can share a part of your way, but at the end, it's your way. They can just share a little small part of it. So this is what
So what
also from Rumi.
what does that mean? That they will never really understand
No, when
your
that-
way?
You have to go your own way. Nobody can take this responsibility from you. You have to do your own way. And the other person, maybe they can guide you, they can give an arm, whatever, just for a little part. At the end, it's your way, and so you have to do it your own. You cannot give it up, the responsibility or whatever, to do this way.
Do you think maybe the fact that there was no centralization of institutional power, or as you claim in Islam, could be one of the reasons why it was so late? There was no order coming from above saying women
Yeah.
are cool too, or women are people too.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You got the point.
Yeah.
Because we don't have this one authority. All the Islamic countries from Morocco till Indonesia, they give themselves the right to say, we are practicing this true Islam. And look to the king of Morocco telling the same story of the Saudis and the Qataris, being the family, coming from the family of the Prophet, and being the ones who are the best for Islam. And all of them are men. And all of them give them this position of being a king. I mean, Islam never ever implemented the system of kings. This is a political system
But
coming later.
it started also as a political thing, right? When Muhammad was alive.
In
There was a leader.
the late time of Medina, when they had to fight with all the other other groups, other religions, and other groups especially, and clans and tribes. And then also on this, be honest, on this time, who was not fighting against each other in this time? So the Jews has to fight always against their enemies, and the Christians, they were in danger. But at the same time, the Jews never attacked other folks. They are the only ones. But the Christians, they always attacked others and missions and missionarying other people all over the world.
What do you think of Hamas?
Islamistic terror organization, the worst thing what can happen for the Palestinians, the worst thing what actually is the reality of, unfortunately, Gaza.
Would you call that political Islam or radical Islam? What is the difference?
They are terrorists. They are all together. They are radicals. They are Islamists. They are terrorists in my mind.
But what is the difference between radical Islam and political Islam?
I think that the Hamas has no religious interest. They are just men looking for power. They are not about religion. They are not interested in religion. I mean that this is what I thought when I read the Charter of 1987 and 2017 of Hamas. So their one and only goal is to destroy Israel and kill all the Jews. All of them. There are no religious
genocidal in objective.
The genocide of Jews is their goal.
And do you think Israel is?
And there's no religious arguments. There are no spirituality in this movement. There's nothing about peace in religion. There's nothing about the spirituality of religion. When it comes to radical Muslims, somehow they have a kind of spirituality for them. They dream of paradise. They dream of
virgins,
whatever. So they have a little bit, even when they are radicals, and in my opinion, they have psychological problems. They have still somehow spiritual and religious arguments, but the Hamas has just political arguments.
Okay. So political Islam is basically people who use Islam as a tool to get power.
Yeah.
Or to suppress people and ideas.
Yeah. This is a good definition.
Yeah. And what do you think of how Israel is behaving in the war?
I mean, now since the 7th of October, which was one of the worst days and what I witnessed in my life, is that, and why I'm very sad about the situation is that people forget how it started, the war now. It started on 7th of October. It started with this brutal attack to a festival where young people who were supporters of Gaza, were supporters of Palestinians, were singing progressive. The progressive left-wing Jewish people were dancing and singing together in the festival. And they were killed by their so-called friends from Palestine's side. So I'm very sad that less people are talking about this beginning and who were the perpetrators and who were the victims of this attack. And at the end, as a Muslim, with a liberal mosque where Palestinians are also member of our congregation, and having Jewish friends, I can say that we are for peace between the Jewish and the Muslim people in this area in total, not just Israel and Gaza is the point. I see that as a bigger problem or bigger issue for the whole region. And I wish we would have peace between the religions there. Then we will have more peace in this area and democracy in each country there. And when it comes to radical people and people who are using religion for manpower, then for me it makes no difference between the Jewish and the Islamists. They are radical Jewish people who hates Muslims. This is the same way unacceptable like the other side. So and Netanyahu, this leader, is not a good leader for my Jewish friends. So they are protesting and demonstrating against him. So if I say I'm solitary with Israel, much more, because this is a democratic country, then I don't say I'm against all the Palestinians. I'm for all the Palestinians who also ask for help from me as a lawyer, who wants to live as women, free and self-determinated, as LGBT accepted in the Muslim community.
Very interesting. But I think someone who defends the opposite idea would probably say that no, it didn't start on October 7th. What happened was there was a lot of violence, a lot of oppression from Israelis, and it was a teapot phenomenon. You know, something was boiling and it exploded in that horrible, horrible way. What do you have to say to something like that?
Yeah, if you want to go back in history, then can go back 3,000 years back. So when it started, I mean, then you have to accept that it didn't start in 1948. And in 1948, not the Jewish people decided what will happen in this region. So when we go back in the 8th century or 7th century, so no Muslim was there. The Muslims, Islam started on the half island of Saudi Arabia. And it was not Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. It was given to the Saudis later. So which is, when is the time where you want,
zero?
Yes, when is the time zero? Where you want to go back?
Yeah, it's very complicated.
And especially as Kurdish Turkish, you know, so this is why I'm singing like that. Mm-hmm. So when you go back, so what does it mean to go back when it started? And I think it doesn't matter when you start singing at the end, if people argue like this or defend the idea another way, then I will ask back, so what happened that people fight each other this way? What are the reasons? Why do you do? Then let's start talking about the fights, about the wars, the reasons for it. What are the main reasons why people cannot live together on a piece of earth? What are the reasons? The reasons are always power and money since 2,000 years or 3,000 years.
Since money was invented. Before it was just
this
power.
Is what, yeah.
Because money is power.
That's it. Mm-hmm. It was power first, as you said. This is absolutely right. This is how I think. And then when money was invented, so people started using money and power together, makes it worse.
So let's talk about the fatwa. When did you write the book called Islam Needs a Sexual Revolution?
In 2009.
Did you receive a fatwa? I don't even know the right verb, receive. Is it to receive a fatwa or for fatwa to be declared?
You know what happened with the fatwa is that in 2017, when I opened the mosque, the fatwa, the officials from the Al-Azhar, first the Al-Azhar University.
In Egypt?
And in Egypt, they have an office for fatwa affairs.
Yeah.
They give a press a press release about our mosque and say, these are not non-believers, they are not Muslims, and all believers know what to do against them, and they should do the best to stop this movement. And the same as the...
Does that include killing?
Yes. This is not speaking out, but this is what they mean.
And how did you feel when you read that?
I mean, I was not so naive, and I was, not so stupid to think that it will be very easy to go this way. And especially coming from Turkey, I knew Erdogan, and I was criticizing him all my life since he's on power. I knew that they will come those things, and I thought, okay, this is too bad, and we have to take care about it, and the protection has to be in a good level that we feel good to practice in our mosque what we want to practice. And then the second was from Turkey, as you mentioned, the Turkish government and the Turkish Office for Religious Affairs named us terrorists because they decided that we are a Fethullah Gülen mosque.
What does that mean?
You know, Fethullah Gülen is the opposite of main enemy, or I call him main enemy of Erdogan. Fethullah Gülen, the person, is a religious leader, and when Erdogan in 2016 was fighting against the so-called coup, he pronounced on the other side this movement. Fethullah is his first name and Gülen is his last name.
They associated you with him.
Yeah, they associated our mosque with him. And Fethullah Gülen is a very orthodox religious leader. This is how you should know him.
So it has nothing to do with your movement.
Absolutely nothing to do with our movement. And Fethullah Gülen has kind of dialogue movement with the Western countries. And I had some dialogues with them. They asked me for lectures. I had some meetings with them. And so people, now especially Erdogan, puts everybody, like in Europe, we put people in the right corner when they are criticizing migration policy, you know, this kind of cancel policy. So, and Erdogan's game is to put everybody in Gülen's field and corner when people are doing something against his policy. So it must come from Gülen's movement. It must come from this kind of thinking. So this country, Turkey, pronounced as a Fethullah Gülen movement, and mosque was meaning that we are terrorists.
Okay, and so they don't recognize it is a mosque. They say it's not a mosque.
It's not a mosque, and they are fighting against Islam. They are enemies of Islam.
Do you think you have the right to call it a mosque?
Yes, I think. And I have arguments, and they stop arguing. They just do it for some weeks, and after, in many interviews and writings, we could just explain what does it mean to have a mosque. What is a mosque? What is the definition of a mosque? And what needs a mosque? So now, we are existing since 7 years, and nobody is criticizing or discussing us anymore that we have a mosque. They call it mosque.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Progress.
That's progress. And and the Iranians, they were also very progressive. They wrote via Facebook also kind of press release that we are not real Muslims, we are against Muslims, and everybody should know that, and not go to this place. This is a place where worship the devil.
So since 2017, you've had police escorts?
No, I have police protection since 2006. And it started...
Every day?
Yes, and it started as, in the beginning, not every day. It started with my fight against forced marriage. As a lawyer, I said, when people asked me, what should we do against forced marriage, in Muslim communities especially, I said, as a lawyer, we need an own paragraph. We need to name it. We need to be serious. We need to speak it out that forced marriage is a crime. And so we have to put it in our criminal law. And the left wing and the liberals, they call me racist. They call me Islamophobe. They call me discriminating the Muslims and starting a fight against my person, the Turkish newspapers and the liberals together. And when I was asked in a conference what would be my idea to fight against forced marriage, and I had this idea of our own paragraph, it was 2003.
So, sorry, just to clarify, a paragraph in the law?
In the law.
Okay.
We need the headline, forced marriage in criminal law.
Forced marriage related to Islam or just forced marriage in
Just
general?
forced marriage in general,
So
for sure.
you weren't being Islamophobe if there was no mention of it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's it. But
Mhm.
you don't have always intelligent
Mhm.
opponents.
Yeah, it's so funny
And
because
then
you're attacked by everyone, which is
attacked, yeah.
it's normally a good sign.
It's a good sign. This is sometimes an honor. It's sometimes kind of award if you are attacked by everybody.
Yeah.
So then you might know that you are really on a good way, because
Or at least
nobody
thinking for
can
yourself.
taking for
Maybe you're not on the right way, but at least you're thinking for yourself. It's more likely.
and I'm serious with my point and honest, and I keep my red line, so I can say sorry, but I'm thinking for my own. So what I want to tell is that when I was sitting in this conference and say that it was 2003, and then till 2006, there was a kind of campaign for this paragraph in newspapers, because I started that somehow, this campaign, and people start talking and discussing this issue and the topics, and more threats and hate speech coming to me. And so after a while, I was psychological so down that, and I got death threats. I couldn't stand it anymore. In 2006, I decided to close my lawyer office, give up my license, and stop my political work, because it was so hard that, because everybody was against me. So I was stalked by Turkish newspapers, by left-wing green politicians calling me misogynist, because I was talking about the women's situation, and they call me Islamophobe, they call me a racist, everything, and I was finished with my energy. And then somebody catched this information and give it to the interior senator in Berlin, the politician and the police, and they offer me police protection, because they said, you are a very important person for women's rights and human rights, and we appreciate your work. If you want, we can protect you so that you can do your work and not to stop your work. Yeah.
So you still have your office, your legal office.
And then a year later, I opened it again,
Okay.
my lawyer office. And so I'm not regularly working that much as a lawyer because of all my other projects, but I'm still a lawyer, yes.
Okay, so picking up on some of those death threats, I read some of them in the documentary, and it's interesting how a lot of them are very sexual.
Yeah.
And your book is about how Islam needs a sexual revolution.
Yeah.
And it's strange. It seems, I don't know if this is specific to Islam or not, but it's strange how obsessed they seem to be with sex, because on the one side, they're super, super conservative, but on the other side, when they hate you, they say, I'm going to rape you, or I'm going to fuck you, or, it's... Where do you think this
Rape
comes
you
from?
and kill you.
Rape you and kill you.
Yeah, this is what Hamas did.
Rape
you and kill you.
Is it because of the punishment, or is it because of the pleasure, or is it a mixture of both? Because there's pleasure in the punishment? Like, where does it come from?
It's a psychological sickness, in my opinion, and you used the very right word. It's an obsession. It's a kind of obsession of sexuality, because those people grow up with a lot of pressure when it comes to sexuality. So they grow up in a surrounding where sexuality is a huge taboo. They are not talking, they are not allowed to do, but they are always thinking about sexuality. Even this situation now, with you as a young man, me as an old lady, this could be a sexualized situation for them when nobody else would be in this room. Because they say when a man and a woman are in one room, the devil is always there. And what is the devil? Sexuality. They have so much sexuality in mind that they are over-sexualized, extremely, daily over-sexualized. And
because it's so repressed?
So repressed, yes. Because it's so repressed.
Maybe I'm being generous, but the devil in that situation could be the man's lack of self-control. So imagine you're talking about leaving your 16-year-old daughter alone in a room with a 45-year-old man, and you're saying it's dangerous. Maybe the devil is not sex itself; it's the man's lust.
Yeah, it's man's. Yeah.
But this is also something that the left will criticize me for saying, because I'm implying that men have more sexual desire in these kind of situations, which I think is true genetically, but that's a whole other story.
I would never deny this. I agree totally that we have on men's side much more sexual drive, whatever, or emotions, drive, fantasies, whatever, how you call it. But not all situations are like what you described with the old man and young girl. Even when really professional people are sitting that's why I mentioned this situation now. You are sitting there as a young man, I'm old. I mean, if it would be another way around, if you would have a young girl as a guest here, you will be in your professional situation. I hope you will not sexualize all the situations.
Okay, I will try.
I will. That would be nice.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Not to do. But it's not just what you are doing. It's what the surrounding is doing, what other people are thinking about the situation. And this is maybe one of the most biggest problem in this community and congregation of the Muslims, that they are depending on what other people are saying. And I'm sure this is not typical just Muslim community. There are many other groups are in the same way and has to change their their own power, get back their own power about their own life. And this is what all the young people never learned in their families, that they have power of their own body, power of their own souls, and be critical also with their own thoughts about sexuality and discuss. There's the situation for the young people. What I want to try to say is that I really understand the situation of the young man on one side. On the other side, it could not be an excuse for their violence and attacks against women. So on this point, we should work much more with the man. As a feminist, this is what I say, as a feminist, we should work much more with the man and discuss this issue also with the man. So how can we change this mindset?
Yeah, I think masculinity is out of balance, even more than femininity.
Yeah.
I did an episode here last week about masculinity.
Yeah, it's really out of control.
Yeah, because a lot of young people, at least now jumping to like a Western culture, a lot of young boys nowadays, they grow up without a father because there's 70% divorce rates, and normally they stay with the mother. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, there's a lot of social media telling them that if you're a white man, then you're to blame for all the problems in the world. Mm. And so, especially people without strong father figures or masculine mentors in their life, balanced. When I mean strong, I don't mean like authoritarian. I mean respected and balanced. They will it's almost like tugay, because they will feel guilty. I'm a white man. They have no real references, and then they end up either committing suicide or having mental health problems or jumping to the other side and becoming someone who hates women. So we definitely need to work with men.
We need to work with men to make their self-consciousness stronger, also their self-consciousness, because they feel also always losing something, or they have really, they don't accept themselves as Tugay, never accept himself before he had his outing. Accepting you as a person, and even with the more testosterone what you have, This is how it is. And again, I say that as a feminist, we should accept that we have a kind of difference between females and males, and the diverse. We have many, many genders in these days. But when I look to the Muslim community, there's just man and women. There's no diversity. There are not so many genders in between. They just know there's a man and there's a woman. And the Western countries are now much more in diversity, fighting genders and names. And this is also another point. When they come to the situation, they are absolutely confused. On one side, they grow up with a lot of pressure against their sexuality, and then coming to Europe, seeing all the freedom on one side, and on the other side, all the confusion of diversity, but having less opportunities for developing their own sexuality in a healthy way. So how can they do that themselves? It's impossible. It's impossible. It's too much what they should deal with. They have not the power for that. So we have to help those young men. Help on one side, and on the other side, it's also, I think it's not just the business of the young man. It's the business of the whole story, whole society. We should all have this understanding, the perspective of everybody.
Yeah. Let's quickly talk about this sculpture in your mosque. It's there to show which way Mecca is, right?
Yeah.
But it has a much deeper meaning, which has everything to do with this project. Can you explain it?
Yeah, the philosophy behind the sculpture is that it's a kind of installation about our philosophy, that under the roof, as you see, the half round, there are many strips, many
wooden beams.
Wooden beams, yes, keeping the whole structure stable. And each of the piece is in a different science. So none of them is the same science. That means on the roof of Islam, we are very diverse. The diversity and plurality, especially the plurality in Islam. And also that it depends where you stay, what kind of color you see, and what kind of graphic you will see. So what you see here from this side is very different than how it is when you stay close to the flower, the plant over there. If you would stay there, you would see a very narrow part and just blue. From this side, we see a lot of white.
So on the other side, it's all the wooden beams are blue on the other side.
Yes.
And you take groups into your mosque and you talk about these perspectives?
We say they have to separate the groups. So if there are 20, then we say, okay, 10 people on this side and 10 on the other side. And then start talking about the color. So use the color for your sentence. So like you are arguing with white and white here, white there, white, why white, not white, yes, white. So, and the other side don't understand, because the other side seeing just blue and arguing blue. Blue is the color, and it's blue here, blue there, why blue, not blue, yes, blue. And they cannot understand each other because they have a different perspective of the topic. And then we ask them to move around. And if you move your body, you can move your brain. And if you just take for some seconds, or just in the second when they stay on the other side, they realize this is really something totally different what my colleague has seen just some seconds before.
Great. I love it.
Yeah.
Depolarized.
Yeah, depolarized.
Last question. How do you define faith?
I defined faith as something very intimate, very private, and full of peace in my mind. And at the end, no words to describe. If you if you are coming for yourself to the point that faith is something what we cannot describe because it is out of science, it's on it's the opponent, then it's a kind of emotion and spirituality and the endless ability what our brain has. There's something endless. And if you feel this, then you can understand maybe my definition of faith. This is my.
So it's a feeling.
It's a feeling. It's a feeling, and it's something what protects me daily.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much, Seyran. It was an honor having you here and super interesting to get to know your story and your views.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate, and I'm 1,000 times thankful that I have the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, we should stay in touch more because we have similar ideas in a lot of things.
And please, not only just to you, also to all the people who listen to this podcast. Please, all of you are welcome to see our mosque in Berlin, because to see something is something different than just talk about it.
Yeah, we'll put in the description of the episode the
please.
Google Maps link so people can check it out.
Just come.
Thank you so much for being with us. This was an amazing conversation. I hope you enjoyed it too. If you're feeling generous, please consider supporting this project. You can become part of the community and get access to special privileges. If not, you can give a like, a comment, or a subscription for absolutely free. And that was all for today. Thank you so much for being there, and thanks again, Seyran.
Thanks. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Teşekkür.